I hear people saying to women in labour, now take a deep breath in and then a big breath out, and that's actually really not very helpful, because when somebody's telling you to take a deep breath in, they're encouraging you to hyperventilate. And when you hyperventilate, you take more air in than you're letting out, and you end up feeling really uncomfortable and sometimes quite anxious and scared. You can have pins and needles going down your arm, you can feel really rotten, and so you need to undo that. And the way to do it is to completely ignore the in-breath. The in-breath will take care of itself. What you need to do instead is concentrate on the long, slow out-breath. And I learnt this trick from Dot Parry, a fabulous midwife who does hypnobirthing up in Salford. And so if you just blow the bubbles, I want you to do a long, slow out breath and blow as many. There you go. I put more good quality washing up liquid in them the other day. Very good. So that long, slow out breath is all you need to concentrate on. Long and slow, and hopefully the bubbles will help to remind you to do that long, slow out breath. Lovely. Okay, so for this technique, you put the rebozo in the same place, so it goes from around the bra line to just under the bottom, and then if you sit right down in a chair, and I'm going to get the tension in the cloth on both sides so I've got no saggy bits. And then if you can just breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth, just so I can see what you're doing. Normally you wouldn't need to ask somebody to do that, especially if they were in labour, because the breathing's more obvious usually and you can just follow it as it is. So I'm not asking you to change your breathing pattern, just to do whatever you're doing, and I'm just going to, when you breathe in, I'm going to pull you towards me with the cloth. And when you breathe out, I'm going to relax the cloth again. So you're breathing in, there's tension in the cloth, breathing out, relax the cloth. And to begin with, I'm just following whatever you're doing, just so that we're working together doing the same thing. And if I thought that you were breathing a bit too fast, which is what often happens in labour, then all I'm going to do is when you're breathing out, I'm going to stay there for a little bit, just linger, so that when you start to breathe in again, I'm just not going to come up straight away with you to that tense position, and stay in the relaxed position for longer. It just might help to encourage your breathing to be longer on the out breath. So ideally babies go into the pelvis like this, but sometimes they go this way in, and that's called a posterior position or back-to-back position. And when they go in this way, they generally have to make a long journey around that way or a long journey around that way before they can start to find their way out. Although sometimes babies don't turn around, and sometimes babies are born in the posterior position, so it doesn't mean that they can't come out. But for most women having that kind of position, the birth tends to be a bit longer and more difficult. And because the pressure of the back of the baby's head is down there for a while, then there's a lot of pressure on the sacrum and the coccyx, and there tends for those women to be quite a lot of discomfort, so that even in those places in between the contractions, there's still some backache going on, and there's not that peace and tranquility that happens for those women that don't have their babies pressing on the sacrum. So some people have really nice comfy sofas, and it encourages them to be in these positions where they're reclined, and maybe if they watch a few hours of telly every night, then they can stay in this position for a long time. And the baby inside the uterus, inside that bag of waters, it's a bit like being in a hammock, and so the heaviest part of the baby, the back, is going to be encouraged to come round here with the mum in that position all the time. And so I wouldn't say don't ever spend any time in that position. You know, watch your favourite film in that position if you want to, but to spend hours and hours in this position just might encourage a back-to-back baby. So alternatively, if you think about upright and forward-facing positions like this, then those positions are going to encourage that baby to come round to the front. So you could be on all fours, leaning on a ball, or leaning up against a piece of furniture, just any way of upright and forward leaning, or just sitting on the ball itself. Birth balls are brilliant pieces of equipment. They're very cheap and they really do a good job. of helping to be in an upright position and to move as well. And you can't recline on the ball, so it tends to keep you in an upright position. If you're going to buy a ball, always buy a pump as well, because they're horrible to blow up without a pump. And also buy one that's called a gym ball, because if you buy one called a birth ball, it costs you another 20 quid, and it really doesn't need to. These are really fine. Very useful for keeping you upright and moving. And you can use them when you're working on your computer or watching the telly instead of sitting on your normal furniture. They'll just encourage a really good position and a bit of movement in the early stage of labour as well. If the waters have broken and you're not yet in established labour, and say you want a home birth or a birth centre birth, the policy of most places suggests that if 24 hours have gone by and you haven't yet got into the active phase of labour, then it's often recommended that you have an induction of labour. So for those women whose waters have gone, I encourage them to do something I call circuits. And I really wouldn't recommend this to anybody whose waters haven't gone. It's very important that you don't just keep doing all these exercises and exhausting yourself before labour actually gets going. But if the waters have gone and you're a bit worried about the time ticking by, then this is what I would recommend you do. To start with, have a good rest. You might use 8 or 6 hours of your time having as good a rest as you can, building a lovely nest with all the pillows and cushions in the house, having the techniques like the sacral pressure or the hip squeezes applied during that rest when you need it, but otherwise just charging your batteries up as much as possible, and remember to eat and drink really well in that time as well if you can. And then once that time's up, then I would suggest that you find different stations around the room and different pieces of equipment or furniture just to help you to change your position quite a lot. So for example, you might choose to sit on the ball for a while. You can make really big circles with your hips on the ball or bounce up and down to some music. So that's one position that can be good. Then maybe some time standing up, holding on to a piece of furniture and really making big circles with your hips, or you can do figure of 8, or when the contractions come along you can do really deep squats down. If you've got something you can really hold on to, you can squat right down and just really keep changing the shape of your pelvis. And then maybe move so that you've got one foot up on something and one foot down, so the shape of your pelvis becomes asymmetrical. And that helps again. And whatever you do on one side, then you should do it for a time on the other side. And then maybe spend some time on the porcelain birth stool that everybody's got at home, your toilet. That's a good position for getting things going as well. And then maybe doing some all fours position, maybe using a ball, or you can put a pillow on top of a chair, or just be on all fours without a ball, that kind of position. You can get a nice massage in that position too. And so you've got all these different places, and I would recommend if you're having some contractions, then spend 5 contractions in each place, or if you're not having any contractions, then spend about 15 minutes in each place, or 10 minutes. And not to have one leg up all the time, but maybe just when the tightening comes, or every now and then, just to really change the shape of the pelvis frequently. And then maybe when you work through a couple of circuits, or all your circuits twice, then to get back into a resting position and have another couple of hours rest before getting up and doing it again. It's really helpful if you can maintain a positive mental attitude throughout. I know that's easy to say and sometimes tricky to do, but sometimes, you know, a couple might come in for care after maybe a few days at home in a long latent phase, and the husband might be saying to his wife, "You look exhausted, you must feel terrible, you haven't slept for days, you've been throwing up," you've just a lot of reinforcing the negative things that are going on. And it's really helpful if instead of doing that you can try to keep positive and thinking about all the ways that you can help her to stay as relaxed as possible, reminding her to relax her shoulders, doing things to help like applying the sacral pressure or the forearm massage or the hip squeezes, and those rebozo techniques as well. Just anything to promote relaxation and a bit of movement. Is there anything you can do to help her eat a bit more or drink a bit more, or remind her to go to the toilet every now and then, because if that bladder's full then it gets in the way of the baby having the most amount of space and the placenta afterwards. So just try to think about how you can encourage eating, drinking and sleeping and moving and all those things, because it's not over till it's over, and the more you can keep your spirits up, even though it's difficult, it does really help. So active birth means being active, and to do that it's really important that you are the one that's being active. It sounds really obvious, but what I'm talking about here is looking after your back and looking after the backs of the people that are caring for you as well. I once had a student who was carted off the ward in a wheelchair because she'd been just too obliging with this woman who had decided not to be very active. She'd become tired and she'd become fed up with everything, and she became very, very floppy. And so because she refused to take her own body weight, my student was supporting her more than was good for her, and ended up with a back injury, which I felt really bad about. So I just encourage you now to be active in the birth. You have to be prepared to get yourself up and down off the floor or in and out of the pool. You have to be joining in and caring for the people. You know, your birth partner needs to still be in a good shape to help you with all those nappy changes and everything that's going to come afterwards. So just try to be aware of that. Another thing as a midwife, I always aim to look after my back in the way that I monitor women in labour as well. So during the labour, we listen into baby every 15 minutes for a minute, and then during the second stage, when you're pushing the baby out more often than that, usually about every 5 minutes. And so when I do that, I try to train my women up really early, so that I'll give them the Doppler, which is the same as the thing that we listen into baby in the clinic, and I'll ask them to hold that on their tummy to listen into baby, and then give it back to me at the end of a minute. And getting into the rhythm of doing that, it causes much less disruption to her, and it just creates more flow and easy movement between us, and she gets to know exactly where the baby is, and or the partner can be doing it as well. It just makes it more easy. And then if she's in the pool, I don't have to be leaning over and curling around the back and trying to find her belly around the corner, because she can just really easily do that in the pool as well. And so it's really good for me and really good for her if we can work together on those repetitive tasks that can involve some lifting and some twisting if somebody does it for you. So I'm going to talk about poo a little bit. You saw from the pictures how when the baby comes down, the rectum gets really squashed, and it's quite often the case that a woman does poo while she's having a baby. And for some women, they can feel really shy and embarrassed about that, and they can really hold back for quite a long time in the second stage where they're trying to push the baby out because they're embarrassed. They don't want to do that in front of their partner or their midwife or mother-in-law or whoever's there. They're just a bit shy about it. But the most recent evidence is showing us how important it is, all the bugs that live on our bodies. The journey that the baby makes through the birth canal colonises that baby with those good bacteria. And the fact that the vagina is right next door to the anus is no fluke. You know, there's good reasons why the baby might get a bit of poo, and it might actually be beneficial for the baby's skin. So try not to worry about that or to hold back because of that, because it's just part of what you are. You're a mammal doing a bodily function, and quite often that happens, and it's good to just have it said really that quite often does happen, and it's nothing to worry about.